segment of the Omnist Hour. Just fade the music out to just a little tinge of it in the background. Well, welcome to another segment. This is our fourth. Today's topic is going to be one that I think is very crucial to an understanding of the Omnist philosophy and ideology, and is one of the core points of contention between many belief systems. Our topic is reincarnation, karma, and forgetfulness. Now, I know that many of you don't believe in reincarnation, and I can tell you that you should. There is a massive amount of evidence that it occurs, even fairly recent scientific evidence studying the phenomena of memory of past lives among young children, which, let's see. I'm going to turn off the monitoring here because it's kind of annoying for me. Sorry. Hang on for a second. There we go. Okay, so you can go do the research for yourself if you want to. If you don't want to do the research, that says that you're maybe not open-minded enough to be an Omnist yet. That's okay. No one has to be an Omnist. It's a good choice if you want to reduce the cognitive dissonance in your life and get control of your thoughts again. Get control of your mind again. Instead of letting other forces get control of it, as often happens with spiritual seekers when they seek to drown out all the voices that are confusing them without replacing those voices with something that is going to prevent a new evil guru from taking over your brain. Okay, so reincarnation is a thing. We are born again and again and again. And some ideologies, some religions think that's a bad thing. They see it as punishment, as a sentence to pain and woe that we've got to try to get out of, somehow escape from it, find nirvana. And I'm here to tell you that those folks are, again, kind of misguided. Yeah, you can look at it that way, and as any Omnist will tell you, any perspective of looking at the multiverse is a valid perspective if it helps you make sense of your life and is impelling you forward to your destiny. If it's causing you huge angst, if it's not fulfilling you, if it's not making you feel like you've got any purpose in life, then I suggest that you might want to find a different ideology, a different passion, something different to pursue, a different meaning for your life. And most people will eventually find that the truth of reincarnation is actually pretty encouraging. In fact, I think that's the reason why the belief in reincarnation is so hugely frowned on by many people, because it is so encouraging. It might even encourage somebody to take a drastic escape from a life that is really, really not going the way that they wanted it to. That's stuck in a place that seems to have no hope. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the desire of people to commit suicide, which, for those who don't believe in reincarnation, is a really negative thing, right? Oh, you've only got one life. You got to make the best of it. Oh, you can't waste it. In fact, we're going to stop you from wasting it by making it illegal. It's a sin. If you're gonna commit suicide, you can't be buried in consecrated ground. You can't go to heaven. You can't. Well, this is the sort of thing that people have done. In fact, reincarnation has been part of healthy belief systems for much longer than many other beliefs. And there's quite a bit of evidence that reincarnation was part of the original beliefs of Christianity. And when Christianity was turned into a religion of control by some clever minions behind the Roman Empire, they decided that was something that they had to strike out of Christianity completely. Any mention of anything remotely like reincarnation was turned into some promise of the kingdom of heaven, of eternal life, and any idea of coming back, except for Jesus. Jesus was the only one that was supposed to get to come back. He could reincarnate, but nobody else could. Yeah, right. Okay, well, this is what elitist religions do. They create a version of the truth that supports their clergy, their system of control, their ability to bestow the blessings of the universe on you through their magical powers and their rituals and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so reincarnation's been around for a long time. The Hindus came up with it and had a pretty good handle on it, except that the process and whatnot, they understood reincarnation, they understood karma, but they really didn't have any good answers for why. And why some lives were very productive, at least according to the estimation of the individual living the life. Others were not so productive. Why it was so painful, even knowing that you'd be reincarnated, to die. Why there was still so much angst around life and hanging on to what we had of it, or giving up all we had of it because out of despair or whatever. So it's been a fraught subject for humanity for a long time. Karma, let's talk about that. So the other side of reincarnation is the idea that what we do in each life somehow creates some sort of I want to stay away from the concept of sin. I know that it's easy to think of karma as, bad deeds that you have to pay for or make retribution for or whatnot, and there's a certain amount of that in karma. But basically, to really understand karma, you've got to back up to why we're reincarnated in the first place. What are we doing here? Why do we keep coming back? And the third concept that we're going to talk about is, okay, so we do this reincarnation thing. Why can't we remember everything that we did before so we don't make the same mistakes? Why do we have this reincarnation amnesia? And so even among people who believe in reincarnation, there's a lot of angst over who set up this stupid system that we got to go, run the same course over and over again, except for a few lucky kids who remember something of a previous life and they have something to go on in the next life. And that's actually where most of the evidence about reincarnation comes from. Hard evidence. Kids who remember a past life that has verifiable details that they could not possibly have known anything about, involving a past life, on the other side of the world, totally unrelated people. They can remember details, places, names, etc., etc., etc. So, if you delve into that literature, that will leave absolutely no question about reincarnation as a real deal. Another source of a lot of evidence is the growing number of hypnotists who have discovered that people remember pieces of past lives during the course of hypnotic analysis, and have confirmed that a lot of the problems that people come to them to deal with through hypnosis seem to have their root in some sort of unsolved angst in a previous life. So what we're really getting at here, and what this system really is all about, again, in the Omnist way of thinking, it's a system of training. Okay, the soul in heaven, any of the heavens, is in a realm where imagination is reality. The mind is everything. Whatever can be created in the mind exists in heaven. It's a place of ultimate creation. Now, the problem with that is that in that realm of ultimate creativity, there are a few checks and balances. And that caused, as we talked about in the last episode on the creation story, that created a lot of angst in the early souls of, having so many powers, so much ability to create, that they actually went crazy doing it. And especially went crazy with once there were a whole bunch of souls in the heavens, kind of crazy with, alternate agendas of other souls destroying as fast as they could create, and basically the war in heaven. That was the original war in heaven, and it's still going on now, but it's been ameliorated by the creation of the physical world and the laws around the physical world and how the physical world impacts the spiritual world, which again, this concept that's going to come up again and again is as above, so below. In fact, you could probably better look at it in terms of how the laws were set up as below, so above. The physical realms were created to provide a training ground that would teach souls a reasonable set of boundaries that they would integrate into their thinking and actions in the spiritual world, to give their spiritual representation an ethical framework to operate within, which they hadn't had before. Okay, so that's what it's all about. We reincarnate. It's a training simulation. We come here. We choose an avatar. We choose to be born to a certain set of parents. Now, they have a choice too. We don't get carte blanche. And there's a lot of competition for promising genes. And that's part of what creates the hierarchy of the heavens that is more fair than it was before. And these laws change. I'm not going to go into the details of how parents choose their children and how children choose their parents and how the ultimate decisions are made. I don't know the details. And, I'm sure there's some other prophet out there that's going to intuit how this system works, or some pieces of it, and will give it to you in their own specialty of revelation. I'm going to give you what I know. Take it or leave it. So, we choose a scenario, we choose an avatar of the available ones that we can get. And we choose a scenario. The scenario is, what planet you're going to be on, what kind of soul vessel you're going to be in. There's a lot of potential, and each soul vehicle has its own set of optimal lessons that can be learned and potential downsides. You can think in many ways choosing an incarnation is a lot like going to the pharmacy and picking out a drug. It's basically the drug you're going to be addicted to for the next lifetime. And as you can imagine, people try to put a lot of thought into that. And some take a long time to decide to incarnate again. That's okay. But eventually people do incarnate, because the heaven of connection, where we plan these next lives, is not the greatest place to be. You might think it would be wonderful to be in heaven and have, in this realm of infinite communication, infinite knowledge. It isn't, because it's basically like walking around this massive kingdom where the emperors have no clothes. All of your faults and mistakes and foibles and stupid thoughts, dark sides of your character, are just sitting right out there on your shirt for everybody to see. And, unless you've got a really, really, really humble ego, you can't stand it that long. There are some souls that, they find it their mission to live in that heaven of connection. They get a kick out of helping other souls plan their next incarnations. I call them spiritual yentas. It's maybe kind of a derogatory term, but to some extent there is an aspect of that, because if your whole focus is planning other people's lives, planning other people's weddings, if you will, you're neglecting that you're a soul too, and you may enjoy being the wedding planner, but you're probably passing up opportunities of growth and learning yourself and working on yourself versus always solving other people's problems. But it's a calling. I'm not trying to denigrate the yentas of the spiritual world. I don't think I could be one. I don't know. I think I'm just a little too cynical for that. At any rate, so we reincarnate. We pick this avatar, this vessel, and at the time we choose it, we know the risks. So we're weighing the pluses and the minuses, and saying, I'll pass on that one. I want to change this one thing, but I have to wait until I can get souls X, Y, and Z to go along with me, because that's part of the scenario. It's kind of a negotiation of a life. It's a choice, but not an unlimited choice, which is something that many people that cover reincarnation have a hard time explaining. And they would like to say, well, we have infinite choice. You can do whatever you want. No, it doesn't work that way. I mean, yeah, for some souls that have grown in certain ways, have certain capabilities, they may have more choice than others. And, is that fair? Well, you don't know what they've been through to get there. So I would encourage you to reserve judgment. With extra choice comes extra risk. The people that choose to be born in the lap of luxury in a lifetime that look like, wow, how did they ever get all that? Well, there's a dark side to that. There's a lot of temptation when you have a lot of choice, and a lot of opportunity to do some very dark things to other souls that you're going to pay for. And that's essentially what karma is. It's the good and the bad that you regret. So when you go back to the heaven of connection, not only do you know all your past lives, what you've done, what you didn't do, but you also know the choices that you had, and at least a fair amount of what choices were critical and you really blew it. So karma is about regret. Not only regret in hurting somebody, hurting another soul, and making a mistake, and being insensitive, cruel, unjust, but the regret of, my God, if I had just not skipped class that day, I would have gotten a better grade, and I would have been able to go to college, and I would have got a degree in art history and become an expert and worked at a museum as a curator, and had an outsized influence on art appreciation and the development of art in the coming centuries. Anything. I mean, it's basically a lot of karma is the regret that we didn't take an opportunity to grow in a way that may or may not still be open to us. And that's part of the negotiation of where you're going with your passion, what it's going to lead to in terms of a calling in the spiritual world. Because as I told you, this system of training is designed to teach souls their own nature, their faults and foibles and strengths and passions, and connect those with something that needs doing, a particular place in the hierarchy of the spiritual world that keeps the multiverse expanding and growing and getting more beautiful, at least in somebody's subjective assessment in some part of the multiverse. Even the ugly is beautiful to some souls. So regret can have a lot of different polarities. And regret can have a polarity of, you know what? I've done really good with my passion, but I've kind of really neglected some aspect of my character that is going to hold me back. Yeah, maybe I'm the greatest artist that ever lived. And, you know, I'm going to be the god of art. But I have some fatal flaw that is not consistent with being a very good god, and is probably going to get me deposed at some time, or maybe already has gotten you deposed, because that's how the hierarchy of the spiritual world works. It's, I wouldn't call it necessarily a democratic system. It's a fair system, though. It rewards based on merit, and it demotes based on public opinion. In a way, it's not too dissimilar from how social media is supposed to work, if it wasn't being gamed by those who have the power to game it, which is certainly one of the challenges that we deal with in the current as below implementation of the plan. And that's going to have to change, because anything that's not working down here reflects something that's not working upstairs. And if things upstairs aren't happy about what's happening down here, they're going to try to influence it, just as we try to influence the gods or the spiritual world with our prayers. It's a two-way street. It's how the multiverse balances itself. When, you know, in the presence of very old souls that have a lot of power, that have a lot of influence, and very young souls that have very little. So, you know, you've got some young souls that just happen to get the luck of the draw and get put in a body that puts them in a place to become very influential in the real world. I don't know, maybe a Mark Zuckerberg type. I'm not sure how mature he is as a soul. He doesn't seem to be very mature as a person, but then, you know, I don't want to insult the poor boy. He's made a lot of money, which is, to some people's way of thinking, a measure of success in this world. At any rate, that's kind of an introduction to karma. The reason why we forget, you might think that's kind of cruel. Oh, to forget all the past lives. If I only knew that I'd done this and that before, I'd blah, 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 blah. And, you know, people who during their past lives, as I've done, and many other people have done and are doing, it's becoming much more common, I think, as the event unfolds. There's some people that are like, yeah, if only I knew all these things I'd done before, man, I could have done so much more with my life. I could have been a contender. right? And then there's other people that start remembering past lives, and it's like they open Pandora's box, and it's like, oh, I don't want to hear anymore. I've had some friends like that myself. After I realized that you could start touching those past lives through plant medicines like ayahuasca. People call them drugs. No, they're not really drugs. They're connectors to the knowledge base of a different soul vehicle. Plants have a very different life than people do, and you can learn a lot from them. Plants are more of a hive type of vehicle. They connect with each other, they connect with the earth, and they exchange information, and they store information. And because they've been on this planet for a long time and seen the comings and goings of humans, they know a lot about our history and the history of other species that maybe seeded this earth, wherever the primordial DNA came from. It didn't develop in swamp water. I'm sorry, folks. That's just not the way it worked. You'll find out. Anyway, so why do we forget? Well, there's a simple answer that, is for the benefit of these people who start, when they remember their past lives, it's like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. Did I do all that? Was I Hitler? Imagine being reincarnated and knowing you were Hitler in a past life. What kind of future would that set up for you? You'd be so guilty of what you'd done in the past that you couldn't really work on anything for all the guilt and shame, and you'd probably just end up going through a bunch of lives of committing suicide the moment you realized you were Hitler once. So that's one piece of it. We forget because it can be painful to remember. But that's not really the core reason that we forget. The core reason is because this is a training vehicle for souls. The reincarnation is for the purpose of training, not for the purpose of finding happiness, not for the purpose of getting rich, not for the purpose of dying with the most toys. It's silly. That's infantile. It's for the purpose of teaching ourselves. And lessons in character, what makes us a core person with a mission that can execute that mission in a humble and loving manner that comes out with an optimal output of that mission that does the least harm, whatever we define as harm, which is, that's part of the lesson too, is figuring out really the essence of what is good, what is bad, what is acceptable to do in the interests of good or the best outcome, and what isn't. This touches on all the fundamental moral issues, and they're not easy, as we've talked about. And any time you start delving into morality, yes, you can easily invent a scenario that says, boo, it's bad to kill. Boo. You should never have sex before 18. Boo. You should never drink before 21. But there's always a counterexample that shows that, well, not really. And in setting limitations where you did, in setting the law where you did, you actually did do some harm, caused some unnecessary angst, prevented people from learning necessary lessons. And, if we don't learn the lessons we need to learn at the right time of life, that can affect our entire life thereafter. In terms of, it's one of the principles that I was raised in. My parents felt very strongly that, to the greatest extent possible, children should make their mistakes early and often, because mistakes you make and learn from at age 4 are easier to recover from than mistakes you make when you go off to college. And I think that's a very healthy parental attitude. My parents let me drink when I was fairly young, and I think my first time I was good and drunk was about 10 years old. And I learned a lot about the dangers of alcohol through that. They let me go out and do things with my friends at a much younger age and get into a lot more trouble, but they were there. As opposed to your typical, preacher's kids who live under a very strict regimen at home, basically are, under the rule of helicopter parents, just micromanaging authoritarians who don't learn a lot of lessons, except maybe a lesson that they just hate their parents and they can't wait to get away from them. And the moment they do, they don't really have a framework for making all these decisions that they now have, and they get into a lot of trouble when they go off to college, when they go live by themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So, so ethically, what we're talking about is complicated. There are as many answers to this problem as there are different viewpoints on an ethical situation, and you're going to have a different viewpoint depending on your own experience. A woman that has been raped in her adolescence is going to have a very strong opinion about what it's legal to do with children, and might see very innocent affection expressed by a parent towards a child or an adult towards a child as, oh my God, look at what they're doing. Where, there's nothing of that sort going on, but, you've been programmed through your experience to react a certain way. And for better or worse, we learn from these successive experiences of being programmed and deprogrammed. And that's effectively what's happening with the whole forgetting thing. Living through one life, you get programmed through that life's experiences to have a certain moral, ethical framework for living that life. That's based upon the avatar you chose and the scenario you chose and how all things played out. When you reincarnate, you need to forget all that and start this life new. Because if you started every life with all of that baggage, it would kind of cement your character based upon the first few lives that you had some serious shit going on. And that would be very unhealthy, let me tell you, because the first few lives, for instance, in a human vessel tend to be pretty chaotic and pretty troublesome. The first time you're it's like the first time you occupy a human vessel is like a teenage kid getting to drive a race car on late night when the cops just happen to have all gone to, I don't know, the policeman's ball. And it's like you can do anything. You got this fancy car and you're racing around, you're having fun, and there's no rules until you run up against a brick wall. And young souls in their first human incarnation tend to hit a lot of brick walls. If that was where you established kind of your framework of character and values for the rest of your soul's existence, that would severely dampen your potential for learning other things. So you forget so that you can build a different point of view. And that's essentially what makes Omnism so compelling as a philosophy and as a religion. Because once you get that each life is allowing you to develop a new perspective, which when you get to the heaven of connection after death, or sometimes during life through near-death experiences and whatever, you can integrate that unique experience with the other ones you've had and come up with a more nuanced view of where you fit in the multiverse. And as I keep telling you, that's how we find our place in the multiverse. Our role, what's going to make us feel fulfilled and happy in the long run as we develop as a soul. And some souls are going to be perfectly content, in fact, just happy as a clam, to spend life as a clamshell until the clamshell ceases to exist and they are forced to find a new physical vehicle. Some souls are going to be perfectly happy being a grain of sand on a beach for an eternity. That's their place. And I think one of the things that you can take with you as you go around the world dealing with various different people is to remember that anyone you encounter might be really out of place in a human vessel. You know, they tried it on a wild hair. Oh, God, it's so much, you know, they have all these souls and they're having a connection. Oh, it's so much fun to be a human. God, you can do anything. And it's so exciting. And you know, if you never experienced it, you might think, well, I'm going to give that a shot. Give it a try. And there's a lot of souls here that just can't wait to get out of that human vessel. It's just not. Oh, no, sorry, we had a little glitch there. I don't know if you saw it, but I saw it. The screensaver went on. I wish it wouldn't do that. I'm going to have to talk to Minicam about that. At any rate, so as you go through life and you get frustrated with people or angry with people, just remember that while they did choose to be born in that body, to be having that life, they may not have known what they were getting into. They're going to learn a lot from it. And if they're really not suited to being human, they're probably not going to be back. So, you know, if somebody just really rubs you the wrong way, just avoid them if you can. It's not always possible, but, you know, try to remember that they're going through just as much heartache and pain as you may be. And cut them a little bit of slack. Anyway, let's see. Did I cover everything I think I wanted to cover today? I think so. If you have any questions, comments, put them in the comment section. I'm still trying to figure out how to post on Rumble as well as YouTube, so I can hopefully have more avenues for generating revenue with this and less chance of being attacked by those forces that we mentioned who seem to want to control social media and twist it to their own benefit. If you'd like to contribute, well, like and subscribe helps me to get enough people looking at the channel so I can monetize it. And if you'd like to contribute any other way, I'll get around to starting up a Patreon page if I have a little encouragement of people saying, hey, where's your Patreon page? I want to give you a donation. If not, I do have PayPal, and my PayPal email is robtrump@yahoo.com, so you can always send a little sustenance that way. So, I guess that does it for the day from, well, actually fairly sunny Bogota, Colombia. I'm saying goodbye for the day. Thanks for showing up.